He talked to me all the time about music. I think maybe it was like looking in a mirror, reminding himself of things that he had learned along the way. Maybe he could see how hungry I was and how much I cared about being a singer. Waylon, he'd say, you don't ever have to restrict yourself to being a country artist, because you can cut rock records or pop records if you want to. He'd tell me about not getting locked in and developing a style. I learned so damn much about rhythms from him, and not overstaying your welcome, and not compromising. Don't ever let them tell you what to do, he emphasized. If people ask you, tell them you're pop. That gives you room to move. Don't say rock and roll and don't say country. He'd had a dose of Nashville, where they wouldn't let him sing it the way he heard it and wouldn't let him play his own guitar parts. Can't do this and can't do that. Don't ever let people tell you that you can't do something, he'd say. And never put limits on yourself when it comes to music. Don't back up. Years later, I'd be in the studio, and the track would really be in the pocket and feeling good. And I'd hear a Nashville producer say, man, that sounds like a pop hit. And I remember Buddy talking to me, telling me that they thought he was crazy as the freezing bus moved down the highway from Green Bay, Wisconsin to Clear Lake, Iowa. The surf ballroom was packed 1,500 strong. Even though it was a Monday night, it seemed like half of the town's teenagers had turned out. The show had been scheduled to start at 8, but we didn't get off of the bus until 6 in the evening. We were so cramped that it was almost a relief to get on stage and shake our bodies loose. The next night, we were due in Moorhead, Minnesota, over 400 miles northwest. Now, if we were lucky and the bus didn't break down again, we might get there by tomorrow afternoon. Buddy was exhausted, and we didn't have a clean shirt among us. He asked me and Tommy if we'd like to go along with him on a charter flight and fly ahead of the troop to Minnesota, so we could hopefully get some sleep and do a little laundry before the next night's show at the Armory in Moorhead. We agreed, and the dance hall manager made the arrangements for the Dwyer flying service at the Mason City Airport to fly to Fargo, North Dakota, across the river from Moorhead. A young pilot by the name of Roger Peterson signed on for the flight, with takeoff set for after the show at 12:30 a.m. In between acts, the Big Bopper came up to me. He was a large man, at least 250 pounds, and he could hardly fit, much less sleep, on the seats of the bus. He had been really sick with the flu. Buddy's chartered a plane for you and Tommy, he told me. Waylon, would you mind letting me take your seat? Heck, I was skinnier than a rail, and I could sleep anywhere. I was excited to be on the bus with the other performers. So I said, sure, but you have to talk to Buddy. And if it's okay with Buddy, it's okay with me. Across the room about the same time, Richie Valens and Tommy Alsop were flipping a coin to see whether Richie might take Tommy's seat on the plane. Tommy called tails and lost. The next thing I know, Buddy sends me to get a couple of hot dogs, and he's sitting there in a cane-bottom chair leaned back against the wall and laughing. And he said, you're not going with us tonight, huh? What'd you do, chicken out? I said, no, I wasn't scared, but the Big Bopper just wanted to go. Well, he said, grinning, I hope your damned old bus freezes up again. And I said, well, I hope your damned old plane crashes. It took me a lot of years to get over that. I was just a kid, barely 21. I was about halfway superstitious. Like all Southern people, I was scared of the devil and scared of God equally. I was afraid somebody was going to find out that I had said that and blame me. I knew I had said it. I remember Buddy laughing as he headed out for the airport after the show. I was certain I caused it. The next morning was sunshine and kind of warm. It was a little after 10 when we pulled into Moorhead. I'd been in the back of the bus sleeping all night long. We were parked in front of the hotel. The tour manager went in and hurried back out. He said, Waylon, come here. I've got to talk to you. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what, except that it was probably bad news. I could hear it in his voice, and I said, no. That's all I said, just no. I turned to Tommy and said, you go. Tommy went outside and came back in a little bit later and said, boys, the guys didn't make it. Their plane crashed. It was just chaos. Buddy didn't have a chance in that plane. They were flying into a blizzard, and the pilot had not been checked out on instruments. There were some rumors that the instruments on the plane were reversed of what they were used to. They thought they were going up when they were really going down. They knocked snow off of the roof of a house about a mile back. Maybe if they hadn't hit a fence post, they might have landed. I had no intention of ever playing another guitar or singing another note. I'd known very few people who had died. It really broke me up, and it seemed like of all the people on the tour, me included, fate had picked the best ones and killed them. My whole world really was destroyed for a while. I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought it was all over for me, even though I was the center of attention. Everybody wanted to talk about the crash and why I gave up my seat to the Big Bopper and what Buddy was like in his final hours. But I didn't have anything to say. How could I? He was the first person to believe in me, and he was my friend. All I could think about was what a good soul he was and what a happy man he was. He loved living. He was in love with his wife and in love with his music. He was so young, and to this day I still don't think it was fair. I went back to work at KLLL, but I was useless. All the sparkle had gone out of me. I was supposed to be the wild man, disc jockey, though I couldn't turn it on the way I used to. Even if I'd play Buddy's records, I wouldn't say much. I'd lost my center of gravity. I wasn't worth shooting. Two old friends, Sky and Slim Corbin at the station, tried to help me, but the only one that made any sense was an old disc jockey named High Pockets. He could see that I was all messed up and that I was feeling guilty because I was the one who survived. One day he sat down and talked to me. "Now, what makes you think you're so powerful that you could cause something like that?" he said. "And if you could bring them back here right now, make them alive and standing in this room, would you do that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can you do that?" And I shook my head, "No." "Well, you couldn't kill them either. You couldn't even will them to die. You don't have that ability." High Pockets had to get down on that level to make me understand. I had to admit that he was right. He was kind of an old country philosopher, though he liked playing the fool sometime. Every once in a while he'd hit on something that would raise the top of my head off, speaking with the simple honesty and wisdom of a man who homespun records and jockeyed discs. It made me feel like maybe my life could begin again. I came home. I'd been out working, and I was probably late. Maxine was standing on a chair with a necktie around her neck, tied to a light bulb. As I walked through the door, she jumped. Of course, the light bulb broke, and she collapsed on the floor, still alive. Now, I don't know what she was trying to prove, but I did know she couldn't have been serious. It seemed more like a sick joke or something. She had a strange temper, and by this time we both knew that we'd never get along. Maxine and I should never have married. I hardly knew her. We were just kids, and pretty soon we started having kids. I was 19 when Terry, our oldest, was born, on January the 21st, 1957. And Julie Ray followed a year and a half later, August the 12th, 1958. Buddy came along on March the 21st, 1960. We both loved the children, but they were all we had in common, and I felt trapped. Each time that we thought we were going to get out of the marriage, that we'd had enough of driving each other up the wall, we'd have another kid. I didn't see any way out, and it wasn't all her fault. I was doing my share of messing around, a hot-shot disc jockey with a lot of leftover guilt. I wanted to do the right thing. I was determined to see the family through, even though I was on a downhill slide that kept getting steeper. Things were just going from bad to worse. I thought that I'd made a good try, but it just wasn't meant to be. My hopes had been in one basket, and even though I'd gone back to life as it had been before Buddy, it just wasn't the same, especially since he was my friend. Now, what if he'd have been my brother? I don't see how you can get blindsided by some of the things fate hands you and come back from them. It was all too sudden, and I got to where I just didn't give a damn. There was a little irresponsibility in me, and I needed more money. Now, they were kind of struggling at KLLL, and I didn't think they were, even though they really were. They offered me more money at our competition, KDAV, quite a bit more. I got mad and quit and went over to the other side. That didn't work out at all. I didn't fit over there. They were from the old school, and I was a foreigner in their eyes, in my own probably as well. So in the middle of the night, I left for Arizona.